Welcome back to the latest episode of Gina's Gems, where you get to meet the team behind the scenes. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with one of our senior consultants, Angela Eskandar, out of upstate New York. Angela is here to share some gems with us relative to return to work opportunities and how we help support both our clients and our vendor partners. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Gina. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I'm changing it up today. Fun fact feels like too much pressure on my colleagues. So I'm rewording my request. So Angela, why don't you tell me something your work colleagues might not know about you?
Sure, Gina. So many years ago, I had a very deep interest in broadcast journalism, and I actually hosted a morning radio talk show. So I can't say that it was the most thought-provoking session that ever hit the airwaves, but it was certainly fun.
Well, you're in good company here. I'm not sure I'm the best host either, but I have the best guests. I can definitely attest to that. So I'm glad you're here. And speaking of being a great guest, you have such a great and interesting background. First, you were trained as a vocational rehab consultant. You worked on the carrier side. Then you went to the employer side, managing disability and leave programs and vendors. Then you provided testimony as a vocational expert witness in Social Security hearings, which we need to hear more about on another episode. And now you're on our side as a consultant. So would you share a little bit about how that's influencing our discussion here today on return to work?
Absolutely, Gina. This is an area that I'm very passionate about. Because in my career, I've been involved in many aspects of the return to work discussion from different vantage points, wearing different hats, and also having developed formal return to work programs. Being on this side of the table, I've really come to appreciate how important it is for our clients and their vendors to have systems and processes in place that support the timely identification of return to work opportunities and the ability to execute on those.
So you mentioned formal return to work programs. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, Gina. So we can certainly work with our clients and their vendor partners to establish formal programs. Programs like this typically are governed by specific policies and managed by a cross-functional team. And while these programs can definitely be effective, they can be very difficult to establish across large, complex organizations. So in the absence of these formal programs, there are many less costly, but still very efficient ways that we can help our clients and vendors approach return to work. So identifying those return to work opportunities is very important for our clients because while the direct cost of absence may be known, it's more difficult for them to understand the less tangible indirect costs of absence and lost productivity.
Right. And there are systems in place to identify return to work opportunities. As we well know, TPAs and carriers are lean and very metrics driven. So it's our job as consultants to ensure that these conversations are part of the process. So woven in early on when discussions begin between employers and employees. Can you share some examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that vendors are operating within a system where they're really managing tasks and being evaluated on how efficiently they move through those tasks. So our job is to work with these vendors on behalf of our clients to ensure that the interactions that they're having with their employees are inclusive of these return to work discussions early on, setting the expectation and planting the seed where it's appropriate, of course, because this isn't a one size fits all. We can work with the vendors to ensure that they're engaging physicians when they do request medical information, that there's an emphasis on the residual functionality and not just asking questions related to what their restrictions are or what they're limited to. We know that the greatest return to work success occurs when an employee can return to work in a capacity that's familiar to them, ideally with the same employer. And the longer that the employee is out of work, the likelihood of them returning diminishes. So this is all the more important why the claims teams and our vendors really have to incorporate that in the early discussions with employees.
Right. And I do believe that we bring significant value in managing the disability and leave vendors that we work with and help them to improve the process. So maybe share a little bit more about that.
Sure. So we've had success with vendors and really looking at some of the fundamental pieces of the process. So ensuring that they have accurate job descriptions for the client's workforce, evaluating how their claims teams are accessing and utilizing their clinical resources. And if training is needed to support that, we've supported that training. We actually saw that in a recent audit that we did. Our team really observed that had clinicians been engaged earlier in the process, either to engage with the physician directly or to discuss return to work planning with the employee, it would have definitely had an impact on claim durations. So these types of changes or strategies really can have a significant impact on the duration of an individual employee's leave and then the overall client's program as well.
Yeah, so we help our clients support their supervisors. They are the first line of defense for the employees' needs. We help them understand what they can and can't talk about, which is tricky. So maybe share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you're right, Gina. It is tricky. And frontline supervisors really are in a unique position because they're often the first to know of the need for a leave. And they also often hold the relationship with the employee. So we know that employees who feel connected to their workplace while they're out are more inclined or invested to return to work with the employer. But we also know that it's a challenging position for supervisors to be in because they're not sure how to engage with the employee or what they're permitted to say. So we've worked with a lot of our clients to collaborate with their internal legal or employee relations or benefits teams to develop supervisor training to really help them navigate that.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You are super passionate about this topic. I think we're going to need to do a follow-up if you don't mind.
No, I would love that, Gina. And I would love to talk about really kind of what the emphasis on building formal return to work programs and what goes into that. That would be great.
Yeah, let's do it. So thanks so much for sharing your insights and your passion around this topic. If you have any questions for Angela and me, feel free to reach out. And we'll see you back here in another couple weeks for our next gen. Thanks,
Thanks,
Angela.
Gina.